In terms of set-top box data as part of the measurement, what do you see as the timeline? Right now, I think it's still, one might say, in its experimental stages, but making its first steps into a potential currency. From your vantage point, what do you see as its future timeline?
Well, the word currency is something we leave kind of to Nielsen. Uh, and what we advise our clients is to use us in conjunction with currency. So we're not really trying to be a currency, but I guess we're becoming kind of an ROI currency. Uh, the set-top box is a component in what we do. It's an essential component. And yet we're different from all the other set-top box measurement companies in the sense that what we're aiming at is not another Nielsen. We're aiming at something quite different that can coexist with Nielsen and with other set-top box companies, but has its own unique place in the market. Very focused on ROI and purchaser targeting, and what kinds of purchasers are being responsive with their wallets to your creative advertising approaches at the, you brand X, what you're doing on television. Who's being affected by that, and how can you target them better by picking programs better? So set-top box is crucially important. Looking beyond TRA, looking at the whole question that you asked about set-top box data, I think it has potential to become part of currency, even leaving aside things like TRA and ROI. Obviously, Nielsen is now looking at creating a new local market measurement system in which set-top box data may be the single most important component. That's kind of what back in 2002, Tony Jarvis and Russ Booth and I co-presented at SMR ARF in Cannes, and we said, what can we do with set-top box data now that Next Century Media has shown that you can actually gather that data and put it through media research standards into a real measurement service? And we said, probably the thing that could be most helped by set-top box data, we said in 2002, is U.S. local market measurement. And we're talking to an international audience. Half the people there in the audience were not from the U.S. We said, we reminded them what they knew, that in the U.S. there are local markets. Other countries don't have local markets. We've got local markets, some of which are the size of countries, and they're all different, and they have to be measured separately in the U.S. And the way Nielsen in 2002 was doing it, with mostly diaries and in a few most crucially important markets with meters, and not really much people meter action yet. It was coming to Boston about that time. We said that's where it's really improvable. That's where set-top box could really make the biggest difference to currency. And we advised Nielsen to use it. And here it is. It's 2011, and it's happening. It's only 9 years. That's probably the quickest response I've ever gotten with any of my wild ideas.
Let's talk a little about privacy. What are the policies here about privacy?
Well, we built the whole company around privacy. That's kind of the cornerstone of the company. It started, my work at Next Century Media had been all about privacy. And we realized, and here we were trying to do addressable commercials. Now on the internet, they're doing addressable commercials. It's gotten them in terrible hot water. I really wish they would have read the Next Century Media white paper on privacy, because we could have avoided all of this. But seriously, you can't think about being in this business without being totally focused on privacy as the first thing to think out carefully. Ed Arzt, who had been the chairman CEO of Procter & Gamble at the time, in 1995, from the podium of the 4A's annual meeting, advised the industry that the industry was changing. There were going to be all kinds of digital developments, and advertising might not even have a place, wouldn't have a seat at the table unless the advertising industry got very hip about what this was going to do and how to get involved and get our oar in, so to speak. And so the Casey Committee was formed, Coalition on Advertiser-Supported Information and Entertainment. And so there were 12 of us in a room. I had been appointed to be on this thing, and it was a joint task force of the ANA, 4As, and ARF. And after an hour in which we were debating about what's the definition of interactive and addressable, and I was really bored, I raised my hand meekly and said, I think we're going to have to come up with privacy guidelines as a very first step. Let's get past the definitions. And they said, that's a really good idea, Bill. Why don't you do it? And for the next 18 months, I went through 20 drafts of the Casey Principles, which were then put up on the 4A's website. And I understand from Mike Donahue that he's planning on putting it back up because they've stood the test of time. We talked about consumers being fully informed about what was happening, having a choice about whether they wanted to be part of it or not, guaranteed of anonymization. So full disclosure, consumer choice, and anonymization were the three key principles. And that's where TRA started, with those principles. But what we've done goes much further. We've got, with TiVo, we've got a very special double key encryption system, a technology that nobody else has. And we've got a 30 household rule, where if somebody tries to use our system to look below the 30 household aggregate level, the report won't run. We're certified by the International Standards Organization on their highest standard for security and privacy, ISO 27001. No other media research company in the U.S. has been certified based on that. And we won't receive names and addresses from anyone. We'll never take in names and addresses. We've got this very elegant solution where we have a partner who sees the names and addresses, and we who see the data, and we, between us, share an addressable key that allows us to put together any number of databases at the household level to join all the databases at the same household, while we don't know who that household is. So I think that that's what TRA is all about in terms of privacy. I think others are catching up. For example, the ANA, 4As, and IAB have put out a standard for in-context notification, which I think is going to totally clean up the problem on the internet that it's been having with privacy. It will take some time, but it will happen. In terms of the TV side, I think people like Comcast have set a standard with what they did in Huntsville, and before that in Aurora, and then Baltimore, and all their addressable trials. They sent a letter. It wasn't even a bill stuffer. You couldn't mistake it. It was a separate letter from the cable company to every subscriber, printed in English on one side and Spanish on the other side, with a bounce back card saying, "Count me out." Explained the whole thing, and got back, 2% opt-out. So Comcast has shown how it can be done in TV. The industry associations are leading how it can be done in the internet. It's right now, I think TRA is the gold standard, but the others will get hip.